Hey, I'm Randy. You're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we talk about high-value hi-fi home theater and headphone equipment. And today, we're talking about more hot takes in hi-fi. So let's talk about your opinions and whether or not I agree with them and why I'm wrong. If you are new here, please consider subscribing. We have over 700 videos, everything from turntables, amps, DACs, speakers, my silly opinions, and even some how-to videos. So in this video format, what I do is I put out a question to my patrons, to my Instagram followers. By the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram, it's at Cheap Audio Man. My patrons, my Instagram followers, give me one of their opinions. Usually it's a bit of a hot take, and then we talk about it. That's pretty much it. Ed G, one of my OG patrons, who actually helps out when we get together at places like Expona and Capital Audio Fest. Anyway, Ed G says, Macintosh is overpriced. You would think, as the Cheap Audio Man, I would wholeheartedly agree with that statement. However, I think when it comes to Macintosh power amplifiers, I don't know if they're overpriced. I mean, when you're talking about like their 2,000 watt monoblocks, they're like 26 grand. I do think they're overpriced. But some of their autoformer amps, which they've been selling pretty much the same design for decades at this point, I think their power amplifiers, some of them, are actually fairly priced. Because there are a ton. So here's the deal. I love watches. I have a watch channel. It's called The Cheap Watch Man. I know, go figure. I talk about watches. I review watches, and I'll link it in the description. But even if you're not into watches, what you would have to agree is there are certain brands that have brand equity and that demand a higher price. Not necessarily because they're quality. They're always quality. There may be somebody out there, another company, another brand, that gives you more value for your money. But companies like Rolex, companies like Omega, even though they're putting out a great product, sometimes they can charge more for it simply because of the brand. And I think the closest thing in audio would be Macintosh. I'm sure there's other brands out there. If there are other brands out there that have brand equity in hi-fi and who get to charge a premium simply because of their name, please put it down in the comments. I think a lot of stuff from Macintosh is overpriced, like their DACs, tuners, their Bluetooth speaker, I think are ridiculously overpriced for what you're getting. But when you think about it as this is the Rolex of hi-fi, they've been doing it for decades. Fundamentally, their designs have stayed the same. I think I can at least understand it. I do have a vintage Macintosh amplifier and preamplifier. I will never buy a CD player. I will never buy a home theater processor from them. Never buy a DAC from them. If I ever buy anything from Macintosh, it's going to be a preamp and an amplifier. And more than likely, I'll probably never buy another Macintosh amp and preamp. The autoformer amps, I think, have a certain sound to them. People swear by them. I like mine. I think it's great. There's other brands that have value, but I don't think there's other brands that have the name, the history, and the brand recognition that Mac has. Bob has a really interesting question. Basically, he's got in his mind his speakers, his dream speakers, his grail speakers are the Klebsch K-horns, but he doesn't have enough space. So his question is, if I come across a good deal, I come across a good pair of these, but I can't even use them, should I buy them? I say yes. If you've been aspiring to a certain product over time, and you have the opportunity to get that product at a great price, even if you can't use it right then and there, get them. Put them in a storage shed. I mean, if you can get the K-horns for thousands off, that actually pays for a storage shed on its own. I'm not saying go and buy a new house or rent a new place because you can get the K-horns in there, but I'm saying buy a new house or rent a new space, put the K-horns in there. You only live once, and if this is something that's going to bring you happiness. Now, if you're going to buy it and then a month later you're like, ooh, I really need to get the Jubilees, then don't. If this is something that you've thought about 10 years, 15 years, even 5 years, I would go ahead and get them. And if it's a good deal, chances are the depreciation is already there. So if you can't figure out a way to actually use them and enjoy them, then you can probably sell them and maybe even make some money. I would never consider vintage hi-fi to be an investment though. Some things do go up in price, but you're not going to be out a bunch of money if you get it. I'd get them. You'll figure out a way, or you won't figure out a way. But if you don't get them, you're always going to regret not getting them. If that makes sense. Mr. Cliff Collins says, don't be afraid to buy the best. You won't be disappointed. That was my mom's philosophy. I changed to it. Don't be afraid to buy what you like as long as there's room on the credit card. Try to buy everything with cash. I wouldn't finance everything. You know, I agree. I think if you want to buy something that's going to bring you happiness, and it's going to be long-term happiness, because some of us actually enjoy the purchasing part more than the actual listening part. And we have to be really careful about that, because that's actually kind of, you get a dopamine hit when you research something and then you actually say buy now or pay now, whatever it is. Our brains like that. And I know of some people that just love purchasing stuff. If you're going to keep something, if you amortize that purchase over a year, like I know a lot of my patrons listen to music 4, 5, 6 hours a day, every day. Even if you only listen to music 3 hours a day, every day. Over the time span of a year, it's going to be over 1,000 hours of listening. So if you've got 1,000 hours of entertainment and you do that for 3 years, 4 years, then that's money well spent. If you don't use it, or if next month you want something new, then I would probably disagree, because you're probably not into, and I'm not saying you, Cliff, I'm saying as a collectively you, then you're probably not into musical enjoyment. You're probably into gear acquisition, which is fine and it's fun too. But if you're into gear acquisition, I would try to buy used, or to buy stuff that's higher value. Or buy stuff that you can listen to, and if you don't like it, then you can return it. If you buy the best, and that's another thing, who determines best? We do, right? So you determine best. Like if someone says this is the best speaker, and you just buy it because they say it, I don't agree with that. I think you need to know what's the best thing for you. And if you're going to use it a lot and not want to upgrade, then yeah, buy the best. It's an investment at that point. It's an investment in your happiness. I don't hate high-end equipment. I hate the gatekeeping associated with high-end equipment. I hate the arrogance of some people in this hobby. So yeah, if you know what's best for you, get it. And you can afford it. Get it. All right, last one. Buff, my buddy, says tax refund to audio. Basically, if you get a tax refund. Should you use that tax refund to buy audio? So I'll answer that question. Yeah, if you want to. Otherwise, buy some Apple stock or something like that, and then let that sit there for a year, and then buy some audio. I don't know. Depends. If you're going to get value out of it, you're going to use it, then buy audio. He's basically asking, should you buy cheaper stuff and more of it, or one $1,000 component? Would you get significantly better sound spending on nicer speakers, an expensive DAC, or getting crazy with amps like dual tiers? What would be the best way to invest a tax refund to upgrade a good but cheap system? Example, Weem Streamer, Gishelli J2, Schgit Saga, and Pre, AIMA A07, Emotiva B1+. Well, in that scenario, the entire system is probably around $1,000. I think at that point, I would upgrade the amp. So I would get the AIMA A07 out of there. Not to say it's not great. It's awesome, especially at the price. Especially when you add a more powerful power supply that's good, and then something like a Sparkos op amp upgrade. In that scenario, though, I would probably buy a dedicated power amplifier. And I would look at the usual suspects, which would be Emotiva or Schgit. At $1,000, you can almost get the XPA Gen 3 or Gen 2. Anyway, the 2-channel version. I think it's $1,000 or $1,200, and it's a spectacular amp. At that price, you could get 2 A1 monoblock, Basics A1 monoblocks. I think that's $900. You could get the Vidar. You get a couple of Vidars, probably. So I would leave everything else the same and then upgrade the power. the power to something AB, something that's got a really beefy power supply, because that can last you a long time. Nothing's going to really change with the technology on that. And I think you'll get, I wouldn't say even a significant, unless the speakers are hard to drive. If the speakers are really hard to drive, which the B1 Plus, kind of hard to drive, you're going to immediately feel a difference. You may not hear a difference, but you'll feel a difference. And I definitely don't think you're taking a step back and you're kind of future-proofing your system. So, yeah, that's what I would do. Well, thank you so much for watching. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon. Patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night, we have Patreon-only Zooms, Patreon-only Discord, Patreon-only Facebook group. You can also use the links in the description. Those are affiliate links, which means if you click any buy, I do get a commission, but it doesn't cost you any more, so it's a great way to support the channel. You can also use the thanks button down at the bottom of this video. Buy me a cup of coffee, but don't feel compelled to buy me anything. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.